Can I introduce you?
Yeah, whatever you want.
This is Jocelyn. Okay. I'm really sorry. Okay, and they can probably hear me because I talk loud. So, Jocelyn Beard, or Dr. Beard, is one of my absolute favorite coworkers because she will take your call in the middle of wherever she's doing, and she will provide you a thorough answer that is amazing. So, no disrespect to any other resources, but we've had people off grid come to things that like I only have cell service for 2 hours. She's gotten back to me with an answer for them that they can use. So she's my superhero, and she's amazing. She's livestock and livestock specialist for the state of Arizona, and one of the leads on our alert team, and a few other things. So, Jocelyn Beard, or Dr. Beard.
Thank you for that. Thank you for all the lies you just told about me. No, it's an absolute pleasure to be here to talk to you guys today. So Anita reached out and said that she'd like to hear a little bit about some basic animal nutrition, vaccination, and all sorts of fun stuff. And I was like, okay, so how do I take what I can talk about for, hours on end to a 30-minute presentation? So I picked something that is something as producers or owners or growers, whatever you want to call yourself, something that is a little bit really hands-on and manageable for you. And so today we're going to talk really heavily on some of the nutrition aspects of raising livestock. But first and foremost, this is something, sorry, I just lost my mic. Something that I will harp on until the day I die is that no matter what I tell you today, no matter what you learn, no matter what you read, nothing I give you is a silver bullet if you're not managing it properly. Okay, so I can come up and give you all the resources you possibly want. I'm not telling you that you're doing something wrong. I never ever do that. There's opportunity to maybe change something or do anything, but if you just take it and throw it out the window and not do anything, then no matter what happens, we just can't change that. Okay, so that's what this kind of little caveat is. But kind of moving forward. Okay, cool. So a lot of it comes down to what animals should I run, right? So even before we get into animal nutrition, you really need to understand some of the things that you can actually do, right? And so it's about understanding, am I going to have them out in a pasture? If so, how much forage is there or how much grass is there? Is that pasture big enough? Am I talking 2,000 acres or 2 acres? Okay. And then that's really going to kind of scale down what you need to do, right? Labor, is it just you and your partner? Is it just you? Maybe the kids can go out and help too, whatever that might look like, right? But, again, all this is going to be very pointed to whatever's going to work best for your operation, okay? Time's also the big one. So a lot of the folks I talk to, they have a town job to pay for the farm job, right? Totally reasonable, totally get it, right? So understand, the time availability in there, as well as financial status, right? There's a couple of things that you always keep close to your heart and very personal. Whatever you talk to with your partner and then whatever you do with your banker, okay? I don't need to be involved in any of those things. So when I get phone calls about, I want to do this and do this and do this, here are 10 options. You pick whatever's going to work for you. I'm not going to tell you which one's going to be best. This is just based off the information you give me. That's what's going to work, okay? So again, no silver bullet in here. So now that we understand all of this, maybe you guys are thinking in your mind, okay, this is what I'm working with. These are the type of animals I want to run, whatever, right? But it comes down to how do we actually feed these critters, right? So yeah, so you think about it just as a human, really, because everything that they eat, we need. Think about it. Those are 6 nutrients that a human needs. Animals need that too. It's really weird to think about. Out of all of these, I will tell you right now, water is going to be the most important. No matter what you do, you can't survive off water. So that one's just kind of a given. Make sure there's always water. I know sometimes, especially if anyone in here is running on the mountains, it's hard because you don't really see animals come down for water. And you're like, what the heck? Like they haven't broken this or what's going on and stuff. Depending on moisture, there'll be like little pockets that they'll find, whether it's a dirt tank or a makeshift pond, whatever it might be. So no need to worry there. Just make sure that there's at least water out if they can, and that they can get to it. But in terms of what we need to focus on, especially those folks who are doing pasture work or have animals out just kind of running around, your forage is going to change pretty dramatically in a year. Okay. Just not because of drought. I mean, that plays a role into it, but I'm just saying natural as is, it's going to change quite a bit. And it changes in these different nutrients here. So crude protein, total digestible nutrients, and minerals. At any given time, I can go take a forage sample today. A week later, I can take another forage sample, and I bet you money all of those are going to be different. Okay. So when we talk about managing nutrition, especially if you're on a range setting or in a pasture setting, this is what we're managing right here. Making sure they have enough crude protein, making sure they have enough of these total digestible nutrients, which are a very fancy word for fats and carbs, and making sure they have the right minerals. Okay. So you guys are like, oh, cool, but how do I know that they have the right stuff? I'm so glad you asked. We're going to test it. Okay. We're going to go out. We're going to test what's there. I can't just walk out there, look at a piece of grass and say, oh, yeah, that has plenty of protein and plenty of energy. No, can't do that. I'm not that good. If any of you are, though, please let me know because I have a job for you. But so the way we do it is we go out and we take clippings, right? We can go out, take a hula hoop. You can take a quadrant. You can take really anything, throw it out there, take a clipping, put it in a plastic bag or a paper bag and send it on down to the lab and they'll tell you what's in it. Okay. They'll do the science for it. Same thing if you guys are buying in hay, if you do have to do a lot of feeding or anything like that, we do want to test some of that sometimes, especially if it's been sitting in the barn for a while. Because I guarantee even if it's been cut and been sitting in your barn for like a year, it will change. Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Angel asks, I do have a weird question. I don't think it's fair at all. I was just told recently that when the rain hits the hay, for the cows, it's okay for them to eat the mold because they have a weak stomach. As for horses, they cannot do that because they cannot get sick. I thought this was weird, is not okay. And I just started to say it's not recommended, and there are multiple types of mold with toxicity.
Right.
Do you want to follow up on that?
Sure thing. Sorry, this ear thing is not going to be cooperative today. So the question was, basically, can you feed moldy hay to cows? Short answer is no, don't do it. Reason being is because there's this fancy word called a mycotoxin. So it's kind of similar to how they make penicillin, right? It'll grow in the hay and it can make your animals really, really sick. Now, if there's a baby pocket of mold that you didn't notice until after the fact, you're like, oh, wait, there might have been mold in that bale. You should be okay, relatively. Just keep an eye on them. Make sure if anything goes down, ears start drooping, maybe you have some snot running down the nose or something like that. That could be a sign that they got into something and they're not feeling good. But ideally, we don't want to feed mold. Okay. Good question. Okay, so test, all the fun stuff. I always get this question of like why stuff changes. Well, why do I have to test it? That doesn't make any sense. Like there's just grass, they'll eat it. But there's a lot of things that change in the environment, right? And as I kind of alluded to, taking a sample today versus a week from now, it changes, right? It also changes by what are they grazing? If they're on natural resources, is there enough grass out there? Is there enough bushes? Is there enough browse? Anything like that? If they're in pastures, what cover crop did you put in there? That can change too, right? And so a lot of it is just, again, kind of the natural environment and understanding the natural environment. So those of you that run on just kind of a rangeland basis or kind of a natural farm or pasture, this will probably pertain a little bit more than those that will actually put in their pastures, just so you guys have a heads up. But we really want to understand what's out there, okay? So I'll tell you right now, I am not a plant nerd. I can only identify like 5 grasses. I can do the toxic plants one really well, but in general, I'm not very good at understanding all the different plant IDs. But what I do know is that there are certain species that grow in a cool season and a warm season. Okay, they're going to have those 2 different types. And so based off of that, I can start making educated decisions on if I know when my forage is going to peak and I can identify some of those grasses in there, that's how I'm going to try to pair up some of my management for my animals. Okay. And so one of those being, and I'm going to harp on it again later on in here, is during an animal's lifetime, I don't care if you're talking a sheep, a goat, a horse, a cow, even a human, the point of time that they're going to need the most calories in their life is when they're lactating. Okay. That is guaranteed. Lactating animals need way more energy than even growing animals. Okay. Because they're having to put all this extra input to actual lactation, keeping themselves alive, keeping the calf on their side alive, maybe trying to keep the baby inside of them alive. There's a lot going on. Okay. So with that, I'm going to try to pair this up to when I might have a peak, right? So I want to make sure that when my animal goes into that lactation period, I'm hitting this just right. Okay. Is that easy to do? Can I just pick a date and go, oh, I'm just going to make sure that I calve on, January 15th and everything is going to be fine because we're about to have this spike. Does that work that way? No. But generally, like if you take a general assessment of, okay, I know my cool seasons are going to peak about here, my warm seasons are going to peak there, then I can start backtracking and making some of those decisions. Okay. Everyone following so far? Cool. Okay. So talked a little about forage testing and all that fun stuff. At the beginning, I showed that really wonderful slide of all the nutrients. And so now we're going to talk a little bit about those nutrients and go into a little bit of detail about them. So water, right? People are like, well, we just have to have it because they need it to live, right? Well, yeah, that's true. They do need water to live. We need water to live. But it's really important in other things within their body, right? This isn't going to be a huge biology lesson or anything like that. But I just want you to know, if they get dehydrated or they don't get enough of water, basically their body starts freaking out and is like, oh, wait, we need to fix something or we need to stop doing something else. Okay. Fortunately, because of how important water is, they just stop living. But it's really important just even for simple digestion, simple breathing, simple them just moving, right? Water's in all of it. Okay. So that's why it's so vital to life. Protein's the other big one. So we talk about these amino acids, which are just, think of it like a brick house, right? We need all these bricks to build a house. So amino acids are those bricks to build the house of the protein. And those are just critical to what you would think is kind of structure, right? Hair, muscle, skin, all the fun stuff. Again, they're really needed in, hormones. We don't think about that sometimes, right? But it is important for hormones. Even just DNA, other reactions, right? So again, just kind of feeding into that. What happens if we don't have enough protein? We run into some problems. Okay, so water equals death. If you don't have enough water, equals death. Protein deficiencies, you don't die immediately, but eventually you might if you don't have enough. But we see it on poor performance. And just real quick, there's going to be a lot of cow pictures in here. I'm just slightly biased with cows, but I do like all livestock, just so you know. But this is true to not just cows. This happens in all livestock, okay? So we'll see poor performance. They won't grow as well. You'll start losing weight on them, right? They're not going to want to eat. They're not going to do well for you. We do see this decrease in maturation. So if I have calves out there and they're not getting enough to eat, or mom can't produce enough through that milk because she doesn't have enough to eat, you'll start seeing smaller calves, maybe even sicker calves, or lambs. And then you also see this decrease in reproductive traits, okay? You really see this like with maybe you're having a hard time getting some ewe lambs bred or maybe some does bred. And so sometimes you have to do a little bit more protein, a little bit more energy to get them there. Same thing with the heifers. So all just kind of plays in, right? Next is carbohydrates. So this is the fun stuff that we find delicious, right? So this is going to be all the energy that they need. So just like how we eat carbs and fats for energy, they need carbs and fats for energy, okay? If they don't get enough, we can run into some issues. These are just the different types, but you again run into poor performance. You have an issue of them not putting weight on or dropping weight super dramatically. If you have anything lactating, there's a common key here. Lactation is really big. They can have this thing called ketosis, which basically means that their body goes into survival mode and is like, oh no, we don't have enough energy for lactation, so I'm going to try to pull all the energy I possibly can out of the body. And I just made myself really, really sick. And that's not good. Okay. And then same thing, you have those issues with reproductive traits. So that's why you might hear of like flushing before breeding season. Has anyone ever heard that term? Flushing. So that's when you give like all of the candy, figuratively, to the animals right before the breeding season, so it can help with this. So that's when I'm going to give them the most energy, the most protein. They're going to help them cycle and get ready to get pregnant. Okay. Vitamins and minerals. So this is long. Same vitamins and minerals we have, right? I'm sure you guys maybe are taking vitamin B supplements or something like that. Same concept. Okay. They need vitamins and these minerals to do just simple function of maybe having a better health or immune response. That's a big one. Okay. We see it all the time with mineral deficiencies of these animals not having a great immune response, or they are always sick, or if you give them a vaccination, they don't respond very well to it. And it's because they don't have enough of these things. I will tell you right now, vitamins and minerals are black magic. A little goes a long way, and you can, get actual mineral for your place. So if you guys recall, when we go test that forage, it can tell us what minerals and vitamins aren't there. And so you can actually make a pack specific to your operation for your animals to help feed, like close those gaps, if you will, or fill those gaps. So that's kind of cool. But something is better than nothing. So even if you just go buy loose mineral, generic brand, or Purina Rain, Wind and Rain, whatever, that's good. Okay. Something is better than nothing. Just for Arizona's purposes, these are the 4 minerals that we're most efficient in, no matter what, across the state. Which people think it's funny because, being the copper state, we don't have copper. But without already knowing that we have this as a deficiency, these are some of the issues that they can cause. Okay. So anyone in here that raises sheep or anything, you always hear, we don't want to, give too much copper or anything. We can run into copper toxicity, which is true. But if you have 0 copper, well, that's a problem too. And so don't get too freaked out if you're like, well, I can't give copper. You can, just the right level. And so these are some of the issues that you can see with it. This is kind of the common signs, if you will, if you are deficient in any of these. The only true way to test if you do have a deficiency, though, in terms of testing your forage or testing the animal, is testing the animal really helps. And you can do that with a liver biopsy. That might be really sophisticated in the sense of, well, I'm not even there. I just want to make sure that they have stuff. That's totally fine. You don't have to do it. Just letting you know. That's the option, because that's normally a question I get later. If they can test mineral status in urine or blood or anything like that. So we do it in the liver. So with all of this, you want to match the diet to the livestock needs, right? So as I mentioned, nursing is going to be your highest energy need. So following kind of that line of having them graze those forages when they're at their peak, or when they theoretically should be at their highest nutrient quality, right? And the reason for that, just to kind of give you another sort of visual aid, is because during that last part of gestation, and this is the gestation length for a doe or a ewe, you're going to have 70% of fetal growth. Okay, so not only is she going to start producing milk, but now that fetus inside of her is going, oh, I actually have to grow to like my birth weight now. And so there's a lot going on towards that last part of the trimester. Same thing for cattle. That last part of trimester, you're going to start to see this increase of the calories they need to help them, one, get to that calving portion, but also to sustain the lactation period. Okay? So that's just a kind of fun visual to keep in mind. Yes, ma'am.
With that, and I just want to, because we have a lot of questions. If you have a dairy cow, a dairy goat, dairy sheep, or anything like that, you are the calf. So you still have to that particular amount of nutrients and everything. They need to provide that to their body to provide for you.
Mm-hmm.
So just keep that in mind. A lot of people are like, well, I just have a dairy cow. I don't need to worry about that gestation. She's not pregnant. Well, you're the calf at that point in time, whether it be for, and goats for soap, or, for dairy or cheese or whatever. Just keep that in mind. Still have to follow these particular guidelines.
Correct. Yeah, because nursing or lactation, again, is still your highest energy need. So thank you for adding that. So then I get questions of, well, what do I feed them? Do you know how much to feed them? Does anyone know roughly how much these animals eat? 4% of their body weight. Okay, yeah. 1 to 3. Okay. Yes, somewhere in the ballpark range. Oh yeah. So if you're going to a show, you probably want them to look a little fuller, a little fancier, right? A little fleshier. But just in general, right? If you can provide them about like 3% of their body weight, you're doing okay. And that's just because, so these are like breeding ewes or breeding does, right? So their goal in life is to produce babies for you. So we just want to make sure that they have a good condition on them, which we'll talk about that in just a second. And so ballpark range, yeah, I say about 3%. The reason that they can go up in percentage, because this is why also I get a lot of questions on this, is, well, then what do you mean it could be from here to here? That doesn't make any sense. Size plays a big role in that, right? So if I have a Dorper versus a Rambouillet, that's a big difference, right? Or if I'm talking about like a miniature Hereford to a big old Simmental, that's a complete different cow, right? So that's what plays a lot of this, and as well as just where they are, if they are nursing, if they are pregnant, if they're not, they're just chilling and hanging out. So that's what drives a lot of this stuff. So just so you guys, granted, I went to school to be an animal scientist, not do math. So if my numbers are off, I apologize. But just so you guys kind of have an understanding in terms of what I mean by this DMI, so that's dry matter intake. Okay. Dry matter intake is basically if I were to go, say I took a bale of hay, right? Take that bale of hay and I go put it in the oven. The dry matter that's left over from what's in that oven, because it took all that moisture out, right? That's what that means. Okay. So this can fluctuate based off of the feed stuff that you're talking about. So if we're talking about, an alfalfa or Bermuda, they have different dry matters on them or percentages. But the really cool thing about it, just for us and to calculate it, is that they're pretty consistent. So that's why we use dry matter, not as fed. Okay, just so you guys have that. So you're not going to feed 2.4 pounds of feed a day. You're going to add whatever that moisture is. So you'll have to calculate that back to as fed. That's kind of where I was going. Kind of makes sense? Not really. Perfect. But anyway, so these are the differences in terms of just, keeping that animal alive. So maintenance, simple maintenance. You can see the difference of just need. So again, it makes sense that the heavier animal is going to need more feed, right? So then that brings me to the body condition score, right? So for goats and sheep, we use a scale of 1 to 5. Okay. Body condition score is going to be the amount of muscle and fat on that animal, right? When I say that, that's what I'm talking about. I want to know how much muscle and fat's on that animal. In particular, I want to start feeling kind of over that hip, loin junction area, right? Or hind saddle area, because the way fat gets put on these animals, it goes front to back, top to bottom. So if she's feeling kind of light here, I know I need to intervene. Okay. But what does that look like? So if you can see them, depending if you have how much hair or wool you have on them, you can kind of see some of those points, right? And I do apologize. This is not to in terms of dairy, sometimes they always kind of have those sharper angles and stuff. We still follow the same guidelines, but just know that your dairy animals probably will be a little thinner out. That's just biology. But this is what we're feeling, right? We're going to feel that muscle area. We want to feel over that spine, that vertebra, and just kind of see what's there. What I like to use is this method. So if you were to take your hand and you were to run your finger like this, and this is if you were going to feel their ribs. This is too thin. So you can feel basically all the ribs. Okay. And then how I know an animal is done right is if I feel right here on the top of my palm, I can't really feel the finger, the bones in there. I can feel a little bit of shape, but that's ideal. Until you get to the bottom of your palm, you can't feel anything because that's the fattier part, and then you can't. That's too fat. Okay. And so if you're out trying to body condition score your animals and you're like, ugh, I don't remember, just kind of do a face palm for a second and look and try to feel does it feel like my fingers or somewhere on my palm? And hopefully that can help. Okay. So that's more of our small animals. Now we get into our bigger animals, right? So ballpark value for dry matter intake is going to be that kind of 2% for a cow. Okay. Depending on growth stage, physiological status, and forage availability, also plays a role in if she can get that 2%. But on average, we go 2%, that cow should be able to hit it. Okay. From there, more math. So if we look at 1,000 pounds, and this is mature body weight versus a 1,300 pound, again, just emphasizing that the bigger the animal, the more they're going to need, kind of a thing. Okay. And all of these numbers you can actually access online. We have resources on Cooperative Extension website and through this really fancy book that a bunch of random scientists put together called the National Research Council for Nutrient Requirements. They have it on beef cattle, small ruminants, guinea pigs, horses, dairy cattle. So if you ever need to reference anything, we can help you with that. But for cows, body condition scoring, so we do the same thing, right? If a sheep's too thin, we look at a body condition score. On the cow, we look at a body condition score. Only difference is that these guys are a 1 to 9. Why? They're fancy. I don't know. I don't know who decided to do beef cows on a 1 to 9, because dairy, sheep, and goats are all on 1 to 5. But whatever. For our area, I'll say this, for our area, so this is a body condition score of a 4. This is what is pretty common in Arizona, right? We have some cows that have to go travel around the world a little bit sometimes to go get their food. I will tell you, because of how adapted the animals are, that they do okay out of 4, but ideally we want them at a 5, and that's going to be that upper corner. That's a 5. Okay. Again, something is better than nothing. So if you start to see your animals slip or do anything, that's when you intervene with a nutrition plan of some sort. And as long as they're kind of on that uphill of gaining weight, you're okay. Okay. Because I do get a lot of phone calls from folks that are, my cows are too skinny and I don't know what to do, or my sheep's too skinny. And I'm like, okay, this is when we start putting out protein tubs and start giving hay and do that and just try to put some weight on them. It's going to be okay. That's all it takes, just a little bit. Okay. The other thing I wanted to mention is hair coat, in case you guys are out there and looking at hair coat and trying to figure out, well, what else can I do? Or what else is, if these animals are in a bad nutrition state or don't have enough minerals or something, they have a hard time sloughing their fur. So you can see this too in like any hair type animals as well. They'll kind of look like this. As for anyone that's growing wool or anything like that, that's when you start to see those breaks in those staples. And so the body goes into survival mode and is like, oh, wait, we have to keep ourselves alive. Screw growing wool. So that's why you see that weaker fiber in there. Okay. And that's just stress in general. It can be nutrition, or it can be they lambed, right? But just so you guys know. So I know this is a quick and dirty, and I'm really sorry. As I said, I could spend hours talking to you guys about all of these things. But next lessons to learn from the nutrition plan would be going into facility design. So seeing if you do have some pens, maybe some close-up working area, whatever that might look like. I did put vaccinations to use, and I didn't talk about vaccinations today because vaccinations, as I mentioned earlier, you know, what you do with your partner and your banker, vaccinations are what you do with your vet. Okay. I don't have a DVM, so I can't tell you what vaccination protocol to use on your farms or anything like that. I can give you a general use and stuff, but it really is something that you have to build with your veterinarian. I will tell you right now, blackleg's a really big thing in Arizona, so that's why a lot of folks will vaccinate for blackleg, no matter what you have. So that's kind of that's the one thing that I can say out there, okay? What is that? Blackleg, so blackleg attacks the muscle, and so it feels, has anyone ever dealt with blackleg? Okay, cool, thank God, it's not fun. So blackleg is almost like a muscle wasting disease, and it feels, if you were to take your hand and like crunch the outside of a potato chip bag, that's what it feels like. And so it will kill the animal, and it lives in like the soil and stuff. Yes. And sheep, cattle. I mean, technically you could, I don't know if a human can contract blackleg. So you'll see stiffness in the way that they move, but a lot of it is kind of the simple, you know, head down, not wanting to get up, fever, stuff like that. But the big thing is you'll start to see weakness and like fatigue, and they just want to get up, and that's a big one.
Reversible or not?
If they have it, they have it. You can't really fix it, but you can help prevent it with the vaccine protocol.
Is it contagious?
So if you don't have a vaccine protocol in, technically, yes. If one animal is showing signs and kind of sloughing the virus, then the other animals can pick it up. Yes, ma'am?
What kind of environment is like suitable for whatever, whether it's fungi or
The blackleg? Everywhere. I'm serious. It lives in all different soil types. It lives in kind of any real environment. With the monsoons that happened and the moisture, we did see a higher instance of it. But it lives, I mean, when I say Arizona is kind of a hot spot, you have to booster a lot more often here than really any other state. Yeah. And then marketing options. So you guys were talking really great conversation in the back row about organic labels and stuff like that. Marketing options, it's your story to tell your consumers. Okay, I can come up here and tell you, these are value-added programs you can do. This is different options you can do. But honestly, it's the story that you're going to convey to who's buying your product that's going to matter most. Nothing I say. It's what you say. Okay. So that would be another good kind of avenue to investigate. But overall, so kind of having a livestock plan in motion. So whether you're working, whatever livestock species you're working with, making sure that you kind of have that plan of, okay, this is what I know their nutrition is going to need for the year. If I'm going to breed anything, this is the, equipment I'm going to need and all that fun stuff. Knowing when to make management decisions. So using that body condition score, that hair coat, when you start seeing animals get thinner, that's the time. I mean, I don't want to scare anybody, but if you start seeing animals lose condition, you're behind the ball. Okay. So you need to intervene very quickly. And understanding those trigger points of, okay, so if I know I didn't get enough moisture this year, maybe that's when I start putting out that hay, or, start building that bank account or that little savings pocket, because I know I have to feed over the winter because I don't have a great forage selection or anything like that, whatever that might be. And then we cannot manage what we don't measure. So that's talking about however you're doing record keeping on your farm, with either what hay comes in, what grains come in, what animals you have, taking those quadrants out, or, doing the hula hoop thing and cutting grass and seeing what's there. And so if I don't know what my grass is doing, then how do I know how to manage my animal? Right. So it kind of plays in the two. So I know I'm kind of cutting on time as Anita starts coming up here, but if anyone has any additional questions, I'll be hanging out so we can talk during breaks or anything. But yeah.
They do want to add the
Yeah.
selenium question.
Okay.
So the selenium question comes up all the time. People will say, look at the map of Arizona, my area up here we're deficient. So then my question is, where do you get your hay from? Because it's not, your animals are not licking the soil. I mean, they're licking the soil, but that's not exactly how they're getting their nutrients. So if you're like, I get my hay from Hector's or Shantytown or wherever, you need to know where they're getting their hay, because the actual selenium is going to be in their forage, which is coming from that area. So if it's like, I do love my orchard grass from Colorado, so I need to know if the rancher there has a selenium deficiency. Yep. So, a lot of times it doesn't matter where you physically are, unless you're growing your own feed. It's where you're getting your feed from.
Mm-hmm.
So on par.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Okay. I mean, I had a producer call me the other day because he wanted to do a mineral program, but he doesn't want to do a really intense mineral program. So he asked me if he could put mineral out while doing multi-min shots. And I said, multi-min is a really great tool, because if you get it and you notice that they get better or something, you have a mineral deficiency. So it's just kind of where you're at. But yes, if you are feeding outside of this, or feed from outside of the state, it'd be good to understand where that's coming from.
Great.
Excellent. Good deal.
Thank you, Dr.
Okay.